all these things make up that kind of feeling or vibe. And so
the feng shui.
Exactly. Yeah, yes. Couldn't put better.
I just wanted to say that.
You were very excited about saying that.
Well, we're playing bingo, word bingo,
word
right?
bingo.
Word
bingo.
in there of the day.
Yeah.
So you talk about it privately, we talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. I'm your host, James Twiggins, along with my co-host, Mr. Keith Crazy Uncle Robinson.
Yes, sir. I finally got my moniker back. I'm Crazy Uncle again. I missed it.
So full disclosure, I told Keith this guest was going to be his new best friend, kind of like Step Brothers, the movie. So tell us about Mr. Vincent-Charles Hodder, the CEO of Local Logic, and the bro fest you guys had for an hour about data.
Really, everyone just needs to know he is my new best friend.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know it yet, but he will. That sounded slightly stalkerish, but man, it was data, but he has a really beautiful mind for talking about data, but how it's actually going to help the human beings who buy and sell houses. We dug into the phrase location, and how his company and himself try to think about that and really materially understand that with data. We talked about the power of authenticity, using data to get to the feelings behind things, what it's like to analyze 85 billion data points, how AI will intersect in all this. And then the real capstone for me in the conversation was how data and service will intersect in the future to wow the client. And that it'll be this super powered service person with massive amounts of data that can just dazzle the human being in the transaction.
It's a great show. I know you hear the word data and you're like, but I'll tell you, this was a really, really insightful conversation. You're going to really you're going to get wowed with the combo. So
yeah, put it in your ears, kids.
Vincent, welcome to the podcast. We are very excited to have you here for lots of reasons. One of which is we're going to talk about, data and AI, both of which Keith is a complete nerd on, both
Facts.
of them.
Big nerd.
Nice.
And also, I haven't seen you in a while. Last time we caught up was at the Inman conference about a year ago. So
that's right.
There's been, in case you haven't noticed,
nothing's happened in the last year.
A little bit of change since August of 2023. So, which we've covered a lot in our pod. We probably won't talk too much about that today, but anyways, well, again, welcome. I'd love for you to share with our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background, because it's really interesting, and the stuff that you guys do is also really fascinating. I think they'll enjoy that, and then we'll dive into some rapid fire questions and get into the meat of the pod today.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm pumped for this conversation. I think it's going to be great. So my background. So I think the most important thing is I grew up in a real estate family. So from a pretty young age, I was all in on real estate.
So does that mean are you an SOB? Son of a broker?
No, I'm not. So it was on the investment side and development side. So nice. I kind of grew up in that world where it was all the deal making stories of real estate, and so I joke around saying I was the weird 10-year-old kid that wanted to be a real estate developer when he grew up. I don't think I actually knew what that meant, but it was kind of from a very young age. It was all about wanting to own and think through kind of property and get the physical aspect of it. For me was really fascinating. So ended up studying finance, did a CFA, worked for a real estate development company. And then kind of quickly realized that I had the same perspective on real estate as everybody else, right? It was financial, it was asset level stuff. It was looking at kind of the characteristics of a home or a commercial property with really little kind of differentiation or other perspective. And I came up with this thesis at the time of saying, what if I can understand location? Like real estate is a unique asset because it's a unique property in a unique location. And what if I focus and hone in on that other piece of the puzzle that most folks don't really think about all that much? Although it is, location, but what does that actually mean? And so I ended up doing a master's degree in urban planning. And the idea was, if I can understand how cities function, and more importantly, how users of this city value different elements, I'd have a differentiated perspective from the get-go. And then that's where I met my co-founder, and we actually co-founded real estate consulting and an urban planning company prior, started doing mandates, and realized that a lot of our uniqueness in that work was around data and our ability to leverage data in meaningful ways. And we realized, okay, well, we're onto something. Like if we're able to bring this data to market, wouldn't that be amazing to help folks make better decisions and get access to more information, so that they're making sure that they're making the right calls with regard to where they live, how the kids are going to grow up, but also the financial aspect of like how these things are evolving, how the market's evolving. So I think that's a good summary of us, in the sense that we're not really traditionally from the real estate industry, but we're urban planners turned data scientists applying that knowledge to real estate. And that parallel thinking, I think, gives us an edge and is really informing a lot of the decisions and perspectives we have in the products we develop, the data we bring to market.
I told Keith before he came on, I was like, "You're gonna love this podcast."
Yeah,
I was like, "This is gonna be so down your alley."
At the bit right now.
I can see it in your face.
Did we just become best friends, Vincent?
Yeah, because he's just like, "Oh my god."
So I do, shocker, but I have a question.
Yeah.
So you got your master's degree in urban planning, and you focused in on this sort of, which I love, is what's the next level of that trite phrase, location, location, location. So if you were to do your doctorate and you had to have a doctoral thesis on the answer to what is the next level or answer to location, 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 what would that thesis be?
Really good question.
I don't know if you're going to like the answer. I think
that's okay.
What we realize is that the difficulty around location, that's unique. It's unique based on the use case, on the land use, on the people that are there. And so, and like, this is obvious when I say it, but like, if you're opening up, or if like, if you're in a suburb and you're looking for a suburban community to live in, proximity to grocery stores or physical proximity to specific amenities is not all that important for you. But noise level, access to parks, greenery, low traffic, low noise is super important. Right. But then if you're looking for an urban kind of experience, well, you want to be like within walking distance to a number of different shops and services. And so the difficulty with location is that it's unique for everyone, and it's unique based on the asset. And that's what makes it such an interesting challenge for us.
Right.
But it's what makes it really, really hard to quantify and understand at scale. It's not, more square footage, not always that example, but like more square footage is most of the time better. It's not necessarily the case.
But there is a diminishing return, right? At, like 15,000, the next 3,000 square feet from 12 to 15 is very different than from 3 to 6, right? Or from 2 to 5,000.
But that pattern is easier to understand. Like, I'll give you an example. We ran numbers on this, and it was we were geeking out on it. But like, so we were looking at proximity to subway stations in urban environments. And what we realized is that like the value goes like this. It goes up and then suddenly plateaus and then drops significantly as you get really, really close to the subway station.
Because of the noise?
Because of the noise, the people, the traffic. It's like, you don't want to be like right next door to it, but you want to be within a 3-minute, 4-minute walk to it,
interesting.
Right?
So in some ways,
if you could do that for all these different characteristics.
Right. So in some
hey,
ways,
I just wanted to. We're gonna have like 45 minutes to cover the data on all of this because I just want to be clear. Like we're gonna go deep on the 85 billion data points that you guys go through, and I'm gonna sit in the background and let you guys geek out.
He's being the hall monitor, right?
No, because there's a lot of nerds. But like,
all right, okay, shut up, Keith. I got it.
Yeah,
go ahead.
no. Ask the next question, Keith, because we got 2 to get through. But
so transitioning awkwardly, Vincent, what's your favorite book or podcast this year or ever, and why?
So this has nothing to do with real estate, but I'm a new dad. Perfect. I think, James, we talked about it, but I have a 6-month-old at home, and so I'm all about like the parenting books, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
So I'm reading The Daily Dad, which is like the daily meditations on fatherhood from Ryan Holiday, and I'm quite enjoying it.
Ryan Holiday's book?
Yeah. So that's been on top of my.
Is that on Audible?
Wait, are you into Stoicism too? Because we might have to just ditch James. And you and I. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm getting into it. It's one of the things I'm trying.
Funny you say that. I was mentioning. I think in that same conversation we had over lunch or whatever was like there needs to be a book for men on what to expect when having a child. There's a lot for women, but there aren't as many for men. So
there's a great podcast on fatherhood called what is it called? How other dads dad, and it's basically interviews with dads like with their experience being down, it's been pretty good.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. That's great. All
right. Last one on this, and then we'll get into you guys nerding out for the next 45 minutes. So I'm actually really curious what you say to this. So if you could have lunch with one person, current or historical, who would it be and why?
Keith Robinson.
Oh God.
The people that know me are going to say this is obvious, but Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia. Like for me, the pretty inspiring guy.
Yeah.
In the sense that what I think is interesting for like or not, what he does, the fact that he's totally himself in his business and that he really is not shy to approach it differently than most people. I think that's a really important lesson.
Authenticity.
There's such value in being who you are and the way you run your business and the way you approach problems within within your business. So I like him. Cool.
Why don't more people do that?
I think it's super hard. Like building a business is tough.
But the authenticity part. Yeah.
Well, because people are judgy as shit, and like, you got to get the thing off the ground before he's the CEO of Patagonia. Like he can do what he wants now. I'm sure he's always been that way, but
is it the chicken or the egg, right? Do you build it and get it successful?
I mean, how many times have you and I said we're going to get canceled on this podcast for all the crap we say?
Every day.
I mean, we don't read the comment section. Yeah.
No.
That's the thing is like, I think you can be yourself, but you also have to be successful to prove to others that there's value to that. Right.
Right.
And so like, I say this, like for me, I want to build a business differently, be authentic to who I am in the process of doing so, but I want to be successful, and success, like it or not, is financial for the most part. Right.
Sure.
So if our business doesn't work,
if
our business doesn't work and you have this novel approach to business, no one's going to give a shit. So you might as well, you need to look at the scoreboard as well and be honest with yourself. Is this working or not? So, yeah.
That's a good segue. So I'll let you guys now go off into nerd zone here, but let's, I do want to ask this question. I think it's really interesting and I want to hear your vision for it, but you've been around for roughly 10 years now with Local Logic. So what is your vision for the company? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Where are you trying to go with it?
Yeah, we want to be a part of every real estate decision in the world because we believe that we have something to add to all those decisions. And the way we want to do that is by quantifying and making information available on everything that happens outside the four walls of an asset. And so essentially we're saying, going back to the point I made earlier, there's so many things to consider for so many different people, so many different asset types, locations. There's a lot for us left to do in terms of identifying those things, quantifying them, and making them available in products that actually help folks, not just throw data at them, because no one wants more data. They want help answering specific questions. Right.
They want answers, not data.
Yeah. And it turns out to be much harder to do than we initially thought. So here we are years later.
Just to be clear, you said outside the four walls, correct? So what's interesting by that statement is we haven't even figured out how to get everything inside the four walls still. As an industry, we haven't even, we literally have access to the damn thing and we still can't get everything that's inside the home. Drives Keith and I nuts because we don't even know the serial numbers on appliances still. We can't even get agents to put floor plans on properties, which is literally like a basic thing that every single listing should have. So I know Keith's probably got a follow up here, but
well, before we go down into the data tunnel, which I am very excited about, let's talk, like you mentioned, products. Is there something that you're working on right now that has you excited, or when you think about productizing data? Anything you'd like to share with our audience around that, on what you're working on right now, what you're thinking about, what your thought exercises are?
Yeah, so it's one thing to collect data. Like for every address in North America, or Canada, US, I should say, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of data points. That's not really useful to anyone. Like no one wants to go through like all these data points, right? So a big value proposition of Local Logic is we say, well, we take all that data, we clean it, we maintain it, we make sense of it, we combine it in meaningful ways, and then we create a product on top of that data in order to make it accessible and valuable to the end user. The majority of our products were kind of end user, consumer focused, so home buyers, home sellers. We launched a product called Neighborhood Intel a few months ago now.
What's it called?
Really focused Neighborhood Intel.
Got you. Thank you.
Neighborhood Intel. Focused at agents. And what we're trying to do is really make every single agent the expert of every single location they're going to be working on. And so combining a lot of this data into a report that is comprehensive in nature, but also makes it easy to communicate kind of the characteristics of a location of a home for themselves, and also make it useful for them to position themselves as experts with regard to their customers, their clients.
If you have,
so that's kind of a big thing we've been working on. Yeah.
If you ever record a demo of that or landing page, we'll put that in the show notes for everyone so they can check it out. I've got a question on, so real estate agents, and anytime you make wide sweeping generalizations, you're immediately wrong, right? But for the auspices of a thoughtful conversation, real estate agents in general are not data analysts, right? What they're best in the world at is shepherding people through a really stressful transaction. That's what they are. That is their core competency. That's their superpower, which usually is pretty far away from data and analytics. And those two things don't normally hang out in the same place at the same time.
Sure.
How do you bridge that gap for the real estate agent population, whether broker, owner? When you think about that, is that really, maybe that's what you do, is you're trying to distill it down to the key points? Or when you think about that, what do you think?
I might take a detour on this one, but like essentially like what our products do, or what we strive to do with our products is, like, if you stand outside your house today, you intuitively understand what it's like to be there, right? Like you can stand there and you're like, okay, I get the vibe of this place. I understand what this is all about, right? And it's like an emotional component to location, right? So what we try to do, and this is our urban planning background kicking in here, is saying, okay, well, concretely, what about the built world is creating that feeling, that vibe, right? And we know it's a combination of things. It's hundreds of different factors. So it's saying like, okay, it's the canopy coverage, the trees, right?
Yeah.
How big they are. It's the setbacks of the house to the street. It's the width of sidewalks. Are there sidewalks? It's the traffic patterns. It's the sense of enclosure, right? The ratio between the height of buildings with the street. It's the noise levels from different sources. It's whether or not there's, are you under an airplane? What do you call them again?
The flight pattern.
Flight
paths. There you go.
Yeah, flight path.
Flight paths. What do you have access to within walking distance, within car driving distance?
Yeah.
All these things make up that kind of feeling or vibe. And so
the feng shui.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Couldn't put better.
I just wanted to say that.
You were very excited about saying that.
Well, we're playing bingo, word bingo,
yeah, word
right?
bingo.
Word in there the day.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. So you're really trying.
But we wouldn't throw all that data at someone like that.
Right.
Who cares? Like, what do I care about the setback? Like, what does that tell me, right? Mm-hmm. So what we try to do is we combine those different elements and we say, okay, well, this is what this means for whatever, like livability or access to things, or we try to synthesize it for folks. And there's like a ton of technical difficulties in doing that in a meaningful way that's actually representative of like consumer reality, or user reality, I should say. And then we go one step further and say, okay, well, now let's build products that help folks discover that location, interact with it in a digital world, so that they're finding the right areas to search for homes. They're finding areas that maybe they're discovering new areas that maybe they wouldn't have thought of, but might respond to characteristics they're looking for. So make experiences that are valuable for the end users, but also valuable for our customers, which ends up being these brokerages or agents or large websites.
There's an old real estate adage that I actually hate, but I think this would be what I heard you say. There's a real estate adage is that buyers are liars, which isn't true. That's not true. I think we're not great question askers sometimes, and I don't think they know how to articulate. Like you're really, maybe this is a little too tongue in cheek, but your answer, you're answering the question and making buyers not liars, right? You're giving the data behind the feeling. A buyer knows in their soul what they want in their next house. They just can't figure out how to articulate it.
Yeah, and, like I'm giving you other criteria for you to look at and make a decision. It's like, it's not just bed numbers and beds and baths. There's like so much more to it. Maybe you figure out like, actually, it's really important for me to have good access to, I don't know, a high quality grocery store because like I love cooking and I like to shop. You know, I don't know, like these types of things are you kind of know, but it's a feeling.
What's interesting about this discussion is, and I like, we all look at real estate because who doesn't, we're in it, but it's interesting to me that one of the things I do when I'm looking at a property is I go to Street View And to your comment, I literally clicked the button to walk down the street, and I'd turn around and look at the canopy and the houses and the paint colors and like, are there restaurants? Like I'm trying to find that feeling of that specific neighborhood. And you're right, because when you get there, the first impression is not just the house, it's how do I feel getting out of the car and around it. And that's a large part of the process, because what we're doing right now is just comparing house to house, going square footage, this, you know, we're looking at things and we're just doing this very analytical piece, but that's not actually what drives a buyer in most cases. It's all of that encompassing piece. So here's a question I'm going to ask. Do you think augmented reality, which I've been very vocal, is where I think we're moving to long term, especially with Apple, with what homes.com is doing, where Zillow's moving into the augmented experience? Do you think that's going to help with that process long term, where the future is we can get to a house, we can do a 3D tour of the home, but we haven't been able to get to a 3D tour of the neighborhood yet, or creating that better experience? Is that a vision of you think we move towards at some point?
I think
you can say no. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, I think what I think real estate is a highly emotional business. Like there's like a je ne sais quoi, and like when you visit a home, like I when I bought my house, we were like visiting all these homes, and then. And I don't know what about this, but I was in one of the bedrooms. And I was like, and I looked at my wife. I'm like, this is the one.
Totally. Right. It happens every time.
Even now, I'm like, I have no clue why. But what about it? But I was like, this is it. Yeah. Right. And we were really excited about it after. But like, there's that thing. Right. And I think looking at like the data that's currently presented on most sites, looking at even the pictures, like, it's hard to get that.
Yeah, we're not close.
I think any technology that gets us closer, any technology gets us closer to being able to replicate that feeling is going to be important. Now, I think one of the things that is really hard to do in real estate today, especially when it comes to location, we think about this a lot. So, but is how do you compare properties, right? Like for me, it's like you can you filter and you're like, I need 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Like, okay, this one is 2 bedrooms, this one is 3. Or like square footage, or like there's these like objective metrics we set out in the industry that allows us to compare properties. One of the things we immediately said is like, how do you compare locations objectively? Like you only have that vibe thing. You only, and like you look at your Google map, you're like, okay, well, there's like this thing here, and there seems to be a park there, but like, and then it becomes very hard to both filter and compare properties objectively. So I think that's one of the things where I think data is going to fill that gap. I'd be pretentious to say that data is going to fill that kind of emotional, the pizzazz.
It's a feeling
you talked about.
It's the bedroom. Yeah.
Well,
you're
but
this is
exactly.
it.
It's
But there's, but God, it's so interesting to me because there's like weights and measures. It's not static, right? That's why it's so hard to quantify. What I mean by that is, if you would have told me I was going to live within a mile of a freeway, I would have told you, no, I'm not. Right? Like I'm not interested in freeway noise. But the house I live in is a mile from the freeway and it has freeway noise, but it's also walk to downtown. It's also on a cul-de-sac off street that people never come down. It's on a level lot. It's on a third. It checked so many of the other boxes that this one thing that I would have told you was a no wasn't a no, because to get everything else. And for me, that works. For my dad, who's super noise sensitive, he hates a refrigerator. Go.
Sorry to interject here.
No, please do.
Noise is such a fascinating. So we have a noise indicator, or noise score, I should say.
Yeah.
And like the way we built it is pretty cool, because when we first started, we're like, okay, the assumption is going to be that we're going to be super objective about this,
right?
And like we're going to go out and buy these decibel readers and put them all over the city and like do that whole thing. And that was foolish to think that we would do that at scale, right? There's like no way we could do that. We still have them. Like we bought them on Amazon. We have them in Gav's desk, but
in his desk, telling you how loud his office is.
Like we had one outside the window of our office forever. I'm like, why does this still here? It's such a waste of time. But then what we ended up doing, which is much smarter, is saying, okay, like what are the noise generating cities? And we were really rigorous in our approach to that. And then we started testing, like, okay, like let's say like a freeway, but there's 3 rows of housing, and then there's maybe a park, the canopy coverage, like what is absorbing noise, et cetera, et cetera. So then we would be able to get a proxy for decibel readings at scale nationwide, which was, in my opinion, like one of the first technologies to do that.
Yeah,
and we're like, okay, this is fully objective, fully quantitative in nature. Like we were like data geeks. We're like, yeah, we got it. Yeah. And then we quickly got feedback from consumers, from users, that's been like, this is wrong. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not. This is like not noisy or whatever it is. And what we realized through those feedback loops is that maybe the decibels were the same, but the perception of noise and nuisance of noise was totally different. Right. So like noise coming from a playground might be the same decibels as a bar, but I don't give a shit about the playground noise because to me it's
because you have kids and you're used to hearing all that screaming.
Well, and you're working while they're being loud. You don't hear it as much, right? Yeah,
exactly. So the point I'm trying to make is, so anyways, those algorithms got adjusted and the power rate, blah 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 blah. But what I'm trying to make is, I think that's the difficulty of saying, how do you create tools that allow folks to discover their needs, their wants?
Yeah.
And then, and the way to do that is saying, what are hard requirements? What are not so hard requirements? And so we just launched a feature, which I think is really cool, of similar neighborhoods. So like for us, one of the things in Canada, I know this is the same thing in the US, is like affordability is a big thing. And saying, well, okay, maybe you can't, afford like the neighborhood you've been thinking about. But guess what? There's other neighborhoods that have very similar characteristics that are maybe priced differently. And so giving folks the ability to discover areas that might fit their needs is an interesting.
So I want to take this in a same direction, but it's like, I guess I feel like we're so far away from some of this stuff. And my comment is, I know you guys was reading, you analyze like 85 billion data points each month. Like, good God.
With a B, with a B.
Not with a, everybody caught that. Yeah. But yet, I've said this for a while, and it's kind of sort of off topic. Like MLSs are nowhere near collecting the data they should be. And I'll give you a basic example of it. I have absolutely no idea what the utility costs are for a home.
Right.
And that, by the way, can be really, really expensive for somebody. Could make or break whether they could afford the house. Like, I have a house in the mountains, and that propane cost per month in the winter is between $1,200 and $1,500. Yeah. And that adds up real fast. In the summer, it's $200. It's like not a big deal. So my point is, where we have to get this data somewhere. Somebody's aggregating it. We have to get this opened up. The utility companies have to open this stuff up. Does that just come naturally? Is there like, does government get involved? Like, how do we get to a point where this home search is I'm going back to kind of the four corners of the house a little bit, as well as exterior, but we're getting to a place where we can really understand this property and this investment. Are we years away, 10 years away? Like, what's your take on that?
I think the speed of iteration that we're going at now is much higher. I think it's not 10 years away. I'm hoping for the sake of our business, it's not 10 years away. I think we have a huge problem in terms of the monopoly of data, right? And this is unfortunately, always been the case in the real estate industry. But I think more and more there's going to be more data that's open. I think governments are doing some work there. Like, the reality is we have a lot of open data in our data sets, but it's certainly not all there. Like, you talked about utility costs, but talk about like even like Wi-Fi speed, things like that are like, there's like all these different kind of pretty basic pieces of information you want to know about a house prior to purchasing it. So to answer your question, I think there's kind of two things that are prohibiting mass and speedily adoption of these data points. The first one is they're not all accessible, or it's really hard to access because folks are hoarding the data, or because the data is set up in a way that is incredibly difficult to ingest. Like, we talk about open data and like, oh, it's easy, it's open, right? Yeah, but you know what we had to build? We had to literally call up thousands of municipal governments, ask them to send us a PDF of data sets in email format, build scripts so that we can extract the data from a PDF, put that in our data sets, and then do that to update the data consistently. Like, it's an incredible amount of technology just to extract the data and then maintain it, make sure that it's up to date. So I think there's like, and we spent like millions and millions of dollars and years of investment to build the tech and the data pipeline to do that, right? Now we're in a position where like we can ingest new data relatively easily if it's accessible and it's not crazy dirty. So I think it's like the technical difficulty of doing that and the other thing is at scale. Like there's millions of addresses that we need to cover, right? And then the monopoly of data. And I think that's like, if you're looking at like or data that's owned by corporations, I think that's a very big problem. If you're looking at data that is of public interest, that's even government, some form of government has it. I think it's getting better.
With the corporations, it's proprietary, and so they don't want to share it. With the governments, it's just antiquated and it's cumbersome, and it's just a huge pain in the neck to get it it sussed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. But well, and so maybe the flip side of that coin, how do you protect it?
Yeah.
Right? How do you like? It's hard to get to. Is that maybe like, I don't know? Do you need to be worried about how you protect the data from being scraped, or is the new AI machine going to do crazy things with this data, or do you worry about that at all?
Yeah, or should the government intervene on some of that stuff too, like go the other way with it? Yeah.
There's like two facts. Like the dirty little secret in real estate data, for the most part, is that it's all the same fucking data. Like everyone has the same data, and they just sell it to themselves, right? And it's just like different fucking iterations of the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? So we're like that, and that's why part of the reason why we're like, okay, we're going to focus on everything outside the four walls, because there's like not a lot of data that exists, and we can actually bring a ton of new data to market. Yeah. And geospatial data, which is kind of location-based data, is inherently more difficult to use and to kind of create. So, and given our background, we had expertise in that. So we're really focused on trying to bring new data to market, and then anything that's like more traditional data, we'll kind of partner or get access to. So that's been a niche for us. That being said, I think government intervention needs to happen to make sure that we get better access to data, to corporate data, especially if that corporate data is yours and my data, right? To ask for consent when they're capturing it, and then and be very clear on what they're capturing. On the flip side, how do we protect our data? Well, the approach we've taken is it's very hard to do. The approach we've taken is we're saying, okay, let's just be innovators. We believe AI has potential. We believe our data is going to be valuable in building AI products. Let's work with folks that are working on those projects, and let's make sure that we're involved in them so that they're not scraping us, but rather they're working with us, and we're experts of our data, and we keep it up to date, and we make sure that the high quality data is ingested and used to train models and build high quality products. So that's kind of been our approach. It's not perfect, but it's more exciting than trying to protect or shed.
Yeah. Let me ask because you hit on something in my brain, and this may not be true, but in my brain, like let me just ask a question. How far are we away from the home buyer having the amount of data synthesis, not just raw data, but like synthesized data? How far are we away from the home buyer having the same data synthesis that BlackRock has, right? Or some other massive institutional investor? They've got geniuses who are crunching data and probably buying. Yeah, they're doing quantitative analytics. Like they're doing all the things to figure out which properties they want to buy. How far away are we from that for the home buyer of tomorrow?
Not far away, in my opinion.
That's awesome.
I think for interacting with those folks, more and more, we're starting to understand what they do have and don't have. And I think the speed of iteration of AI and data access in real estate is so high right now that companies like ours and others in the space are building stuff that is as good, if not better, than those large organizations are doing. And we're doing it with a business model that's different, to where inherently we're incentivized to share it with a higher volume of potential customers. So in this case, home buyers, home searchers, agents.
Okay, good. So you're not going to sell to BlackRock. That's what I heard.
That's funny. I still want to follow up a little bit on this, just because like we watched this whole scenario go down with Bing, for everybody. Bing, Microsoft, putting up a real estate search portal, and all this MLS data was there. It's MLS. The concept's the same here, regardless of the word MLS, but then everyone was like, where are you getting this data from? And then all of a sudden they're taking it all down. So
because they were scraping it.
I mean, yes.
Yes. Right. Theoretically.
And allegedly. But my question is, so a company creates proprietary, let's say you create something new.
Yeah.
And you're obviously licensing that data, or you're making a profit off of that, or you have a business around that, which is what you guys do to some degree.
Yeah.
And how do you stop companies or AI from scraping that data or using that data without your approval and monitor that? Because I mean, you could argue that it's theft, like it's infringement. It is
like
it's,
it is.
And isn't technically all AI basically just doing that right now to some degree? Like it's just ripping data off from all over everywhere all the time and using it.
Like the reality is like there's no real way that you can I'll give you like the kosher answer, and I'll tell you what I actually think. The kosher answer is like we monitor everything, and we can see if there's spikes in the usage of our data, and it's true, right? But like if one of our customers are suddenly like pulling like 10x the requests they normally do on a daily basis, we know there's something funky going on, and we'll investigate. But like the reality is like, sure, they can scrape, and it's funny because sometimes we get like inbounds from folks, and they're like, I've been using this data in my customer engagements, blah, blah, blah. Can you do something similar? And it's like our data. It's like literally a screenshot of our data. And I'm like, so you've been stealing from us and now you want to work with us. So the reality is you can't really do much about it other than out innovate or make sure that there's like a freshness component to the data you're making available. So it's like, you could scrape it, but you'll not get the freshest, most up-to-date data if you're not working directly with us. Solution.
They can only copy what you've done, not what you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a pressure to innovate in that new shit.
Also, too, I think it's important to remember that AI is. Sometimes people ask me, in a baseball game, what inning is AI in? And my answer to that usually is, we've almost finished inventing baseball, right? That's what inning we're in. And these are this scraping data, who owns what. There's going to be lawsuit. This is going to get sorted out, right? How this attribution is handled and how credit is given, and it's just so early.
It's a huge IP. It's like even for us, like we do deals with folks where like we build models for certain applications. So we'll have the data component, and then we'll actually build the model. And like our models, of course, is like, so it's made up of like hundreds of different models that feed together to create like the quote unquote model. But then it's like, okay, who owns the, and then those models learn over time most of the time and need to get retrained, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, who owns the model? Is it us? Is it the customer? Like, what's the ownership of these things, right? Knowing that like we're doing the data, and the data is going to be ours. So
lots to sort out. Since we're on AI, I mean, I'll ask the obligatory, how big is this going to be? And then you're going to say, revolutionary, probably. At least that's what most folks of our ilk, although I see the look on your face, so maybe not. So how big is AI going to be? What's this really going to turn into for residential real estate long term?
Yeah, like I think there's like two camps, or like there's two main perspectives. Or like it's going to change everything, and it's going to remove jobs, and it's going to change the process. Or, and this is my position, I think it's going to make us way more efficient, and I think it's going to give us high quality tools. But I strongly believe in a human component. It's like human augmented AI, where AI is going to make you smarter at scale. It's going to give you more insight, more intelligence to do your job better, so your productivity goes up. But like, I think real estate is a really, really tough one for AI.
Totally.
Because if you compare it to other asset classes, and I'm thinking like the financial side of this for now, but it's like, you look at other asset classes, the number of transactions is so low compared to more traditional equities. The second piece is it's a unique product in a unique location. And so it's very, very different than like, hey, you're selling this thing 1 million times, right? Like we have all this data. So like for us building these types of models, it's really tough because we're like, okay, like there's not that many comps to look at for a given market. Like we're not talking millions of comps. We're talking like thousands maybe in like the hottest markets. So we've had to think through like, how do you do that, right? And we have some ideas, and we've built some tech to do it. But I think that makes the use of AI technology in the context of real estate a little bit harder than other industries.
I'll actually say more than a little. Like, you're literally a data scientist who can't fully explain the data behind why you were standing in a bedroom and said, this is our house.
That's a great comment.
Right.
Yeah. So like, it's going to be a while until AI, if ever, someday maybe, but like, you literally do this for a living, and you acted like a normal buyer.
Of course.
You grab your wife's hand and you say, this is the one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think, like, if you look at it, like, if you look at the financial component, like, I think you can make sense, you can contextualize the whole thing a bit, like, and some people do, but like, I think there's always going to be this human component that's going to be really
for sure.
Yeah.
So data, basically, kind of summarizing a little bit, you're going to have a lot more inside the four walls and outside the four walls to maybe refine you into a specific neighborhood or home. So we'll be able to, I'm making this up, instead of searching 9 houses, we're going to search 3 because it just helps us get there. Is that a fair assumption, or do you still think people will search 9?
I think people will look at 100, but like because they'll have the tools to compare and then really hone in. And prior to needing the help of an agent, or prior to kind of like getting to that next step, there's going to be more a stronger discovery phase.
Right.
They'll understand their needs and wants. They'll identify the top 3 prospects, and then they'll convert, and then they'll still want that accompaniment and value that an agent can bring. So like, in my head, the quality of the leads that a brokerage or a website will provide to the agent will be higher because we'll have given them more information. We'll have kind of gone through more elements to think through. And so to take your comment back, Keith, is like, I think the buyers won't be buyers anymore because they'll have more information to make their decision pop up. Yeah.
More information that they don't even fully understand.
100%.
Right? Yeah. I think that, imagine now, because you mentioned leads and that component, which will be powerful, but I see like this super AI bot that is helping an agent with that. When you meet with a buyer, you always do the visioneering exercise, right? Tell me about your perfect home. Tell me about your perfect neighborhood. And it's this really fun, rapport building, thoughtful exercise. But if you had like a supercharged AI bot that was listening to that conversation and then internalizing that conversation, maybe helping the agent ask some better or different questions, right? And then elucidating other neighborhoods like you talked about before, like you really want to live in Piedmont, California, but Trestle Glen is
slippery
close.
Slope.
Why?
Slippery slope.
Yeah.
Fair Housing Act. Like, you have to be really careful on not, right? Like, for me, AI can do, like, there's 2 things. One thing is, I'll help you make the decision, which is tough, right? Really tough to kind of, it's a fine line for us to navigate. Or I could use AI to tell you, well, look, this is how this area is changing. This is how we think it's gonna evolve. This is how cities are evolving over time. Let us take a kind of forward-looking or view on, this investment for you guys, or how likely you are to still be, again, you need to be careful, but like still be aligned or enjoy living in that area based on what you're looking for. And so I think you can be descriptive, but also have a forward-looking view. And so if this technology exists,
descriptive,
like, the
not
agent
predictive.
now,
Yeah, sorry.
well, predictive in nature, but describe what the future is going to look like, and then let people judge whether or not that's a future they want to have.
I mean, look, you could go really deep on that. Not, this could be a whole separate pod, but I mean, you could look at public policy. You could look at policy decided by politicians, and you could have algorithms that could create, from historical perspective of decisions, to project outcomes.
Oh, like when
we're right there, James.
No, I know.
That's
my point. Yeah, like, you could go, hey, I'm this action created these results in these cities, and so you shouldn't buy a house here because in 5 years we can predict crime rates will sky. I'm making this up.
You know how you talked about BlackRock? Yeah. This is what they're thinking about, but this is what companies like ours are thinking about, is saying, okay, well, cities are created by 3 major stakeholders: governments, consumers, and the private industry, right?
Yeah.
You need to consider all 3 in understanding how the built world's going to evolve and then impact the real estate market.
Dude,
from a livability perspective, but also a financial perspective. And so when I think about that and the applicability in our industry, is saying the onus is going to be on the agent to understand these things, have access to the tools in order to be able to be that expert, so that the consumer is informed and there's real value being created.
Can see lawsuits flying here. Like, the lawyers are going to get all over this. So
this is where we're going to be going, because the data is going to be available, whether or not we want it to.
All right, Keith, take us home on the last question.
Okay. The second to last question is, when can you and I have lunch or cocktails? Because I know we will have a good time.
Inman.
But yeah, Inman. At Inman, block an hour because I want your brain for an hour.
100%.
But the question that we always ask to close is, if you were an agent or a brokerage or a real estate tech startup, what's the one thing you would implement today to help your business?
Yeah, like same thought. It's, you need to be servicing your customers, your clients. You need to be the expert. Like I go to you because I don't know. I don't think about this every day. So you better know things that I don't know. So from our lens, it's like, if I ask you where the closest grocery store is from this house, you better know.
Right.
And I have access to Google and I have access to my phone. And so you need to be on top of your game. So for us, it's any product, service, tool that allows you to be perceived and hopefully deliver value on being the expert of every single neighborhood in your market. Every single asset you show is essential. And I think it's your responsibility as an agent to do that.
It's a great answer.
It's a good answer, my friend. Vincent, so awesome to have you on here. And now you have a new best friend with Keith.
Yes. Whether you wanted one or not.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Yeah.
Some really interesting insights on just government involvement. And, this last comment you said about just, how it can affect decisions and AI could steer and just, fair housing issues is very fascinating. So we'll have to watch some of this shit go wrong over the next year or two before we get it right. But
probably.
Anyways, well, it's good to see you. Look forward to seeing you at Inman, my friend, and we'll look forward to having you back again. So
thanks, James. Thanks for having me. Fun.
For sure.
Yeah. It's our job to say out loud what everybody's only thinking to themselves. It's your job to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode.